Okay, so this is going to be on body shaping, and I'm just gonna go through basically an exercise routine. I don't know if you would classify this as qigong or what, but this is a kind of strength training if you did it really intensely. Um, but if you do this for every muscle or every area of the body, your body tends to be the correct shape. And then if you do it super intensely, I guess you could probably get bigger. I've never done that without weights, but I think that's just from a lack of focus. Like you could do this pretty intensely, pretty in focus, but it's easier to get that intensity and that focus using weight as an amplifier of focus, and often even using a machine can kind of amplify or isolate the focus even more. And then that intensity is really what causes the body to grow, because you're like shoving you're basically driving water into the tissue using the weight and gravity and the levers on the machine or the exercises is you're just driving water into the tissue. And so yeah, so you're just driving water into the tissue, and it's a lot. You're doing it without any exercise, and so doing it with like a workout implement or a buddy or some weights or anything like can help you drive drive water into your muscular tissues to cause swelling basically. And a bunch of other stuff. You're sending energy into the muscles, into the circulatory system, and so that swelling or that redirecting of energy, if it's at a high enough intensity, then the tissue will actually like start to gain mass, basically. So that's how you get bigger, is because you're like literally packing energy. And so that energy or that chi that you're packing or that you're pushing into the body, if you combine that with food as like a structure, that energy will weave the food together into the shape of the body, or into the shape of your, like how you're focusing. So can just go fingers to toes, I guess, or what? Toes to fingers? Fingers to toes, so you can see what I'm doing. So it's like notice that I would say, make an analogy that that your hands are in water, and you're feeling the fingertips, the water is rushing over the fingertips back and forth, like if you're underwater, and you're pushing the fingertips through water, and by them running into the water, it's actually driving water into them. So in this thing of like, oh, we're trying to hydrate the body or pack chi into the body, press water into the body, that analogy is like good. That's the feeling thing. So the next level up analogy is that that's not an analogy. It's the hand. The perception of the hand is moving through the perception of space. So the perception of the hand and the perception of the space are the exact same density of thing, whatever they are, whatever that is, whatever the metaphysics behind perception is. Your perception of your hands and your perception of the room are the same thing, they just look different. It's all perception happening somewhere. Like the view from the left eye and the right eye is somehow combined into one image. And so the thing that you're looking at to see that image is it's the same density. It's just showing this and then it's showing that. So as you move your hands through it, it's something of the density of perception. The body is only of the density of perception, and it's moving through space, which is also the density of perception. They're physically the same. So as you move through them, one of them's running into each other equally, almost as if like some mass of water was moving through water. Or imagine a whirlpool moving through water, right? That's the body is a whirlpool of perception moving through perception, moving in a different way, like call it space. So you can stay there, or just come down to pretend you're underwater. Like just pretend you're underwater, forget all that crazy stuff, and just pretend you're underwater instead of in perception. And then that water is, you're pushing it into the fingertips. So the fingertips are being pushed through and into water back and forth, and then start to activate your muscles, feeling the activation and the movement through perception. And so two things are happening here. One is that the object is moving through perception, and two is it's being changed on the inside. As I change shape or as I change form like this, I'm changing my perception from the inside. And then that change, or that flexing, that contracting, that movement, has a component where it's like, oh, there's this thing that you're in control of, and then there's this thing that you're moving through, and all of it is of the same density. It's like all the exact same substance, right? So it's like we're just trying to feel that. So it feels like my hands. It feels like my hands moving through space. And I become more or less cognizant of feeling the space and feeling my hands. So obviously one way to enhance this would be to be in a sand bucket, a bucket of sand under that, and that gives you the sand to push and pull off of, and you can see how that would let you pack more awareness into your fingers or into your hands. Or you could hang on them or something. Lots of ways to like really get this like area packed with awareness. So like I'll try and just get the hands entirely full. To be honest, I don't know, depending on your autism, you could get lost on one area forever, but like, how much time do we have? We're all dying. So how much time do you really have to like get your hands full? I don't know. So move to the forearms. And this is all it takes for like general body shaping. And then if you want to be like sport dense or just larger, really, you just go harder, more intense. And you notice when you're you can be totally off and feel the area passively of the forearms, and the hands are just like, oh, they're moving through space. I'm kind of relaxed from like elbow down. And then there's some aspect of them that can move. The forearm can flex. And then with this long bone, you can get rotation, right? So that's like a log or something moving through water or through perception. And you'll see pretty quickly that like right next door to us is like the place where dancers live. It's like a dimension right next to this one, and you can step into it. And some people just live there all the time. Like the tribe of like fish people. Some people are just born in that reality. So now I'm doing my arm bones. These are the gun show, some people call it. And you can see how picking up like a 10-pound weight or a 45-pound weight and would help you pack awareness from that flexing impulse, you know. But you can really, once you get so you could get lost in the shoulder for a long time, almost one at a time. I don't know, but again, it's moving. It's like it's going through water. Is like your water. So like imagining that you're in water. That's very like actually having the experience of like being underwater and being able to breathe on your own. Like not with an air regulator, but being able to breathe underwater, that feeling is the exact feeling that you want when you're practicing like yoga or qigong. It's analogous to that. It's directly analogous to being underwater, as if you're breathing through a hose that connects to your nose and goes to the surface. That's exactly what it's like actually. So you can just pretend that's happening and feel the water, like just imagine it. That's fine. The imagination works just as well. So that's the main visualization. That's really all you have to do for this. And so just as I do it, I'm just trying to be cognizant of all the ways that I'm moving through perception and feel how the perception is like moving spared it. Roaches gross me out, but I think they're one of the higher organisms on Earth, as far as I can tell. Like if PETA was gonna go on a campaign, I think roaches are smarter than a lot of dogs. And so they super duper gross me out. But I don't like killing them. Because I think they're sentient. So still focusing on my arm bones, my biceps, my triceps. So having that bone area, feel it move through, feel the perception flow over it as it moves through it, and pack. Like it's like you're packing perception, packing awareness, and you could just imagine that the fluid in the body is awareness, right? When you get a good pump, why do you have a good pump? Oh, because it's swollen with water, right? So all you're trying to do is get a type of pump here. If it was really intense, you would get a big pump and your veins pop out. So this is just, you can do it at whatever level of intensity, focus. It helps it to be complete, but it's just driving water into that system, and your body's already got a structure that will accept that water and to make it into more use. So you're just basically applying pressure. That's what it boils. Like all of the exercise stuff that people do is just ways. It's just ways of manipulating their focus and applying fluidic pressure to their muscles and driving the water into it. And when they do that correctly, like if a person learns how to drive water into their muscles correctly with whatever exercise, they'll get better. And so that ability to drive water is actually related to the muscle function itself. It's the relationship to awareness, a relationship to perception, or to the perception around you, and that's what determines, as you do stuff like this, you see like what actually determines your like movement ability or athleticism or your skill. And so it's cool to focus on individual areas because you can kind of feel where it's easier to explore all the possibilities of the arm and notice where it's like not working. It's like, oh, I can notice I'm screwed up right here by only playing with the arm. The more of my body that I add into the drill, it's like good for shaping. But because the more and more you integrate, the easier it is to compensate for your mistakes. So highly skilled people are often have also a ton of bad compensation mechanisms. Because it's like the smarter you get, the dumber you can get, and it's hard to resist being dumb. It's almost like intelligence comes with a lack of ability to resist stupidity. If it makes the intelligence feel good about itself, I guess. Yeah, it's almost like it makes you more vulnerable to pride. Anyway, so if you isolate things, you can explore that. It's like, oh, you can only do so many things if the body part's isolated, so you can feel, oh, right there is where I don't have a lot of pizzazz. For me, that's my whole spine. So now I'm moving from the arms, which really I would love to spend a very long time on all of this with weights, but just to kind of give you a run through. Now I'm in just moving to my shoulders, my back, that area. I'm kind of going, just scanning and integrating the whole body slowly in, I guess. And I'm focusing on that area, but once I've warmed up, it's noticed it'll kind of automatically participate with whatever you're doing back there. So you don't have to think about integrating other stuff, but let it do it if it wants to. And you just focus in on the area. So right now we're doing thoracic, not necessarily the head, and just down to kind of the bottom of the scapula, the whole area, including basically the scapula plus the ribs in that same elevation, latitude. Remember, if you feel stiff or stuck in this area, it's just perception, moving through perception. Make sure you feel that light and that free. There's not actually, you're just perceiving the problem. Not to say that there's not some sort of problem, but it's not what you're perceiving. All you're doing is perceiving it. So that perception is free. So however stiff it is, you're just letting it be the same as everything else perception. Moving through perception. As if you're in water, so there's no threat of weight. Because the weight is also a perception. So the body's a perception, the weight is a perception. The momentum, the space is all perception. It's all truths, but it's perception. And so perception is the same mass. It's like a bunch of things in water, made of water. It's like how you can have objects in water, but the water is still just the same density, even though it's like, oh, there's a current, there's a whirlpool, there's a wave. It's like all these different things of water, but they are all the same density and they interact with each other in the same way with the same mass. The same rules of flotation. It's all very even. So the perceptions are the same way. One perception's a current, the other perception's a wave, another perception's a whirlpool. But it's all perception. So if you feel stiff, that doesn't make any sense. So if you feel that it's all perception, that can break up the belief in the rigidity. Oh, a gecko. And so I'm still just working that area from like here to here in terms of where my focus is, in terms of where I'm firing it's trying to fire my muscles, trying to feel the inertia of the space as I move perception through perception. It's still all just here. And you can see why, like, as you feel, like, you only have the ability to have this kind of generalized pressure. You can't go too specific. You might see or feel things, but in terms of the ability to push, it's very broad. So the things that often do work best is like dumb, simple machines, like heavy stuff, weights, nothing too crazy. It's like you have to look at the weights not as like a number you're trying to put up, but use the exercises and the weights to feel like what weight or what heaviness like really helps me, and you feel that you're very much pushing or driving water into the tissue. Forget the stuff about contraction, extension, etc. I promise you muscle mechanics are a little bit different than that. This thing where you're trying to drive water into the tissue is not how you operate the muscles, but it is very related. So just for the sake of brevity, let's do the head. And so that's also how you can evaluate if you're getting much bang for your buck, is if you start to calibrate off of like, how much water am I pushing into the body? And that water, why does the water go in? Oh, because of ion channels and glucose transport and nerves firing, and who knows what, who knows why. A whole cascade of chemical reactions, water go in. Water go in, inflammation go up. So what you're, to calibrate your perceptions more accurately, you have to feel what you're actually trying to do, rather than like out here. It's like, what are you actually trying to do when you lift or when you pack chi or whatever? It's just pushing water. You're pushing water into there. So you study the ways of moving the water. Moving the water moves the water. So this is water. Anyway, so I think I got kind of distracted or bored. I'm kind of bored. I want to focus on stuff that's not very video-y. This has already been too long. We can do the legs really quick. Let's just go over. Okay, so the head, this thing, this lower area, Yeah, everything's so jacked up. Yeah, you get water into the legs standing up, you kind of have to crouch. You have to get into a squat. So it takes more pressure to get into the lower half. So with the legs, you can push a tremendous amount of pressure from the legs. And that's why I think leg stuff like hurts or burns so bad. This method, it's like necessarily harder. It's like that's actually where you're stronger. So it's like more intense. So basically, if you're wanting to get strong into layering like chi packing in general, you need to follow my own advice here, but you learn it from the legs. Because it's like at this intensity of like horse stance or like just down in that area where I've gotten in this good a shape before. I never realized how important it was of this basin of this area. This is where the degree to which it's going is that's your strength. So it's like these types of drills, all the lunges and stuff like that. That's where you learn to, you're not trying to punish your legs, it's where you learn strength for everything. But again, it's at a level you have to be like, is this helping me push water into it or not? Is this stretch opening it up so that the water can go in? Is this intensity, is this angle driving water into the area that I'm wanting to enliven or improve? So that's what should determine the duration of your stretch, the type of exercise you use to like look at the legs, look at the body, look at the situation. Is the posture and the intensity, the effort, and the struggle, do you feel it driving water into the muscles? When you activate the muscles, it drives the water in to a certain point, so you need an activation, relaxation pulsation, but that everyone knows that drives it in. There's also certain movements that move the chi past it or the awareness past it. There's all these different ways to stack or push more hydration into the tissues. And people get injured when they're doing a lengthening thing. When people injure themselves, like just, oh, I did an exercise and it injured me instead of making me stronger, that, especially if there's a habit of it, that's just, there's delusion. There's just absolute insanity, psychosis concerning how the body actually works or how your mind-body connection takes place. And a lot of people are fine because they don't conceptualize it. So a ton of injury means that you've like started thinking about something that's natural and got it wrong. So you're doing, if the injury's happening just from like, oh, I do this thing, or this practice, then it's like you're goofing something up that you think is smart, but it's actually stupid, and that's how you get hurt. So it's good to know. It's like it's why it's good to like train and do stuff, is that it's like, if you're getting injured because of an accident, or you're working with somebody, or it was like abrupt, but if you're just getting like, oh, I run and I hurt myself, or I lift and I hurt myself, or I do these like isolated practices that are supposed to be rejuvenating and bodybuilding, and I'm like getting injured, you know, 100% you're just completely delusional about something. But it means you've probably started to think about something that other people don't think about too. So maybe you've learned something, who knows? But if it's screwed up, it's like, it's just not, you know, it's bad. It's a sign of stupidity. It's like celebrated stupidity. It's gotten down to the body level. And you know, it's like people only know about what they're doing wrong, basically. So anybody's doing anything correctly, it's done via some incomprehensible means you could never talk about even if you wanted to. And this should make it a little bit more enticing to work harder in some cases, to actually try hard enough to get something done, and to just chill out and maybe work a little less maniacally, because it's like all you're actually trying to do is drive water. So, and use that as the metric of success for a stretch or a pump, because even the stretch allows water. And so it's like, it kind of solves the question of like, oh, how much should I stretch? How much should I allow? How much should I try? It's like isolate. Do that. You're only working with a couple forces. One of them is movement through the thing, and the other one is movement of the thing. So you practice one at a time, both free, weighted, all sorts of things, and then that go through the body. Like you can start out individually. Usually as I get like halfway or a quarter way, I get so warmed up that I have to do something full body. And so I'll just cycle where I start so that I warm up with isolation, working out until I kind of like snap on, and then you just kind of feel that you're in the perceptual medium. So you're That would be the warmed up state also, where you're like in your element. So that's where you'd be able to catch the balls and swim in the water and dodge the punches and stuff like that. So it's just the warmed up state, which is also more noticeable with your heart rate up. Like if the heart rate's going at a certain rate and you've got your physiological stuff, it's a lot easier to get into that like expanded state where you're taking ownership of all of your perceptions.